broader panel discussion organized by our WIN group here in Dubai is to take a next step in that journey, further the conversation, a small but seminal step in conservation and collaboration to better preserve this precious resource that's on our planet.
Today, we are discussing a topic that is so important. It is imperative to our very being and our existence, which is the sustenance and availability of clean water. Clean water is a basic human right. It is a necessity only second to air. So every being on this planet should have access to it. And communities, nations, and governing bodies should work as one unanimous engine towards making this happen. In fact, this should be their top priority. But just think of life without clean and running water. We can't. It's unthinkable. And this is why we need to learn that water is a precious resource, not to be squandered. So how do we get cleverer about its usage? We have invited here some key decision makers from wellness and sustainability, governance, as well as our regional A&D industry. And as we just heard from Chris, our panelists are veterans in their fields with years of experience in their individual spheres. So we hope that collectively we can create momentum to further this cause. And if all goes to plan, fingers crossed, we will all leave considerably more enlightened and ready to step out into the world, sleeves rolled up, taking this cause head on. A big thank you to Christopher and Shaw Contract, who have graciously hosted and championed this wonderful initiative for more than 2 decades with their passionate cradle-to-cradle philosophy. Well done, Shaw. Let us start with talking about preserving existing groundwater and why this is so important today.
In the UAE, around 60% of water resources is supplied from groundwater, which probably quite a few of you would be surprised to know. We're really aware about desalinated water, but there is a large portion of water consumed from groundwater. So about 60% groundwater, 30% is desalinated, and about 10% of water is recycled. So looking at the groundwater that is consumed, most of that water is consumed in the agricultural sector. So in the UAE, mainly in Ras Al Khaimah and Abu Dhabi, they grow a lot of tomatoes, melons, date palms, and they're all fed by an existing groundwater supply. And so it's really important to preserve the groundwater in the regions so that we don't consume more than is able to be recharged. It's really important because of food security. So having the groundwater supply to grow these crops enables the country to be secure in the food that's available within the local region. And a lot of water is used, particularly from date palms. They're probably one of the highest water consuming crops. So looking at how we can reduce water in the agricultural sector, we can look at hydroponics, for example. There's a big trend now to grow fruit and vegetables without soil. So they're in water and the water is recycled, and you reduce about 70 to 90% of the water consumed in agriculture. It's a bit more difficult for date palm trees because the trees need to be rooted in soil. Right. But we're seeing a lot of smart systems now where sensors and technology can be used to identify when date palms or other crops are in need of water at that time, so we don't overwater crops. And the same approach can then be used in irrigation, and that kind of shifts into the built environment and the areas of landscaping within the region here, and using smart sensors and technology to help reduce the water consumed within landscaping.
Just a little bit of context is groundwater. I mean, and this draws mainly on my public health area where I'm working, basically drinking water. But groundwater is water that goes through a large filter called ground, the soil. So it's a very high quality water. So so it's a reservoir of wealth that every country, every community has. So think about it like this conversation is called the precious resource. That's a really precious resource. It's something that it's not even bearable. It's really, really important. It's also something that the quality can go down significantly. If you overpump, then you have other intrusion of other sources of water that you might not want. Say happens in coastal areas when you have shallow water with groundwater supplies that provide you fresh water. Then you might have seawater entering groundwater supplies, or like increasing your salinity, which makes it harder to treat, harder to use. So just reinforcing what Catherine said about the importance of this resource. It looks easy to take sometimes, but it's really hard to, once the quality is gone, it is gone forever.
So what we're establishing here is that this is a fast disappearing resource. We need to be clever about its usage. It's not just there all the time. We won't get it quite literally on tap.
As our global population continues to expand, the pressures on basic natural resources will be definitely increasing. It was an interesting UN projection statistic mentioning that global demand for fresh water will exceed supply by 40% in 2030. And it's mainly because a combination of climate change, human action, and the growth of population. So we keep growing, and at some point we have facing two problems. The one that it's running out, the quality of it, but also we're not stopping to grow as a planet. So it's challenging.